everyone, welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're going to be continuing our exploration of joins in SQL. In a previous tutorial we looked at the inner join, and the inner join allows us to combine records from multiple tables. For example, we do need a related field to allow this to happen, and in this example we're going to use the driver ID from the trips table and the driver ID from the drivers table. This is really where the join is happening. For example, in the trips table, if there's a driver ID of 1 and in the drivers table there is a driver ID of 1, then that information will be included in the result of the SQL that we're writing. In the trips table, if there's a driver ID of 7, but there isn't a driver ID of 7 in the drivers table, then that information will not be included in the result of the SQL. Okay. Now let's just go and have a reminder of what that looks like from an SQL point of view. We're selecting data from multiple tables, and we're creating the join based on that relationship of the driver ID in the trips table being the same as the driver ID in the drivers table. Okay, so this query is going to show us the dates where any driver is going to be working. Now if we run the query, we can see all of the dates when these drivers are working. Okay. Now remember, if there is a trip which doesn't have a driver or a valid driver number, for example, then that information won't be included in the SQL output if we're using an inner join. And just to make that absolutely clear, I'm going to go back to SQL and I'm going to insert into trips a new record of data using these values. I'm going to say the bus number is bus number 23. The route number is route number 12. I'm going to suggest there isn't a driver. I'm not going to put a driver ID in. I'm just going to use null. And the date is the 3rd of March 2025. Let's say that. So let's run that SQL. We're going to insert a new record into trips. Let's see if it worked. Yay! There we go. So we have a trip with no driver. We don't really want that to happen, but just to illustrate this point, let's go and run our previous SQL again. I'm just going to write it out from the very beginning. Let's just do select everything from trips with that inner join on the drivers table on the relationship between trips.driverID and drivers.driverID. Now when I run this, I'm not expecting to see a trip which has a bus number 23. Bingo! It was not included in that inner join because there was no driver ID in the trip. The driver ID was null, and there's no corresponding driver ID in the drivers table, so it's not included in the inner join. Okay? But what if we do want to see every trip's information, whether it's got a driver or not? We still want to see the trip data in our SQL, and if a trip does have a corresponding driver in the drivers table, we also want to see the driver data as well. So basically what we want to see is this situation. Show us all trips and please include any related driver data if there is any related driver data. That's really what this is telling us. So rather than having an inner join, this time we have a left join. Okay? So let's just update the SQL. I'm going to change that to be a left join. Okay. Now let's see if that works. Yay! It showed us all of the inner join data like we saw before, but it's also showing us the additional trip which doesn't have a driver. Okay, and there's no corresponding driver table data there. So that's a left join. Now, there's something that we need to understand about this kind of thing. On this line which says from, the table that we write here is always the table on the left. Right? This is the table on the left, and this is a left join with the table on the left. Okay? If we wanted to do this, this is the table on the left, and now we have a right join. Okay? So this is the table on the left, and we want to do a right join. And this is the table on the right. But this is now a right join. Table on the left, table on the right, right join. Okay? Now what we expect to see here are only trips which have drivers, plus any other drivers, whether they've got a trip or not. Just all drivers. And any related trip data if a driver has a trip. Does that kind of make sense? So let's see if it works. Yay! We're seeing all of the trips which have drivers, and we're also seeing just any other driver information. So driver 9, 13, and 14 have no trips assigned to them. Okay? Now I'm just going to give you something to think about here. I'm going to put trips. Let's just mess around with this idea for a little bit, because this is kind of fun. I'm going to put trips here. And let's look at, should we look at buses? Let's look at buses. And what I want to do is, I want to do a left join in this scenario. I want to see all buses, and I want to see any trip information included for any buses which are on a trip. Okay? Now remember, in SQL, on the from line, this table represents the table on the left. So this is going to be buses. And I want to do a left join with the trips table. And of course, this is going to be trips.busnum and buses.busnum, because that's the join, right? This time we're looking at buses and trips, and the common field is the busnum field. It's a primary key here, and it's a foreign key here. Okay? So what do we expect to see when we run the query? We hope to see all bus information and any trip information for buses which have an associated trip. Let's see if it works. Yay! We see all bus information, and we also see trip information for any buses which have been assigned to a trip. Yeah, it works. Okay, I am just going to do one more because it's kind of fun. This time, I only want to see buses which are on a trip and any other trip information. Okay? So this is the left and this is the right. Do we need to make any changes to our SQL? This is the left. That's still the same. This is the right. Yep. Left table, right table. But this time we're doing a right join. Yay, I think that's correct. We're looking at all buses which are on a trip and any additional trip information. Okay, And wow, including bus number 23, which is going on a trip, but it doesn't have a driver. Have a think about it.